From the House of the Rising Sun, the first woman Prime Minister, the first woman Attorney General, the first woman to lead a parliamentary political party, the first woman opposition leader, introducing the revolutionary people's leader, Kamala Prasad Visesa.
Come on, come on, come on, come on. The People's Revolution.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Good evening to my colleagues who are here with us in very small numbers, but great in spirit. Good evening to all of you who are locked on to our virtual, the first for this new year of 2021. I cannot express to you how happy I am that we are able once again to speak with you. Albeit we cannot speak with you one-on-one, in person, face-to-face, but that day will come. And we in the UNC will continue to work to ensure that that day does indeed come. But in the meantime, I really feel overjoyed to share with you some ideas, some thoughts, and see how we report on what has happened in the past year, and to share with you our plans, our initiatives, our strategies as we go forward in the new year. As Saddam said, with the knockout punch in 2022, we must knock out the PNM, we must get them out of office. They must go, the PNM must go, Rowley must go, and the whole batch, they must all go. So I am also very happy to be with you, to speak with you. For those of you, we must say, give praise and thanks to God who have survived into this new year, 2022. Thank God that you have survived a very difficult year. At the same time, we recognize and share condolences with the families and the loved ones of those who were not able to make it through into 2022. Other speakers have mentioned over 3,000 persons have died under this wicked, incompetent government from COVID. Tim has shared with us, Dr. Gopi, saying this was not necessary, should not have happened, but I'll come back to that point. So let's recap a little on some of the work we did in 2022. The leader of Senate Business, Senator Mark, shared with you matters raised in the Senate by your loyal opposition. Chief Whip MP Lee has raised matters we dealt with in the House, in the Parliament, and of course I shared with you some of the work we did in the Parliament, outside the Parliament. Overall, 2022 was a year that we saw the opposition members across the board and activists, our supporters everywhere, really stepping up to the plate. We began the People's Revolution last year, October, and I sort of noticed that that revolution continues. The People's Revolution continues into 2022, and we will not stop. We must not stop until we remove this wicked, incompetent, and corrupt Rowley government. When we look at the COVID situation, I know my colleague, Dr. Gopi Singh, spoke with you a bit on it, and I would like to share some more ideas. Over 3,000 deaths. We called for change, you remember. Tim was the first man off the block in the Parliament since last year in January. And again in February, Dr. Gopi Singh raised in the House the issue of the COVID as a dangerous disease, declared by the WHO. We tried to get an urgent debate, and my colleague spoke to you how many things we've tried to raise in the Parliament, only to get shut down. That's why we need these virtuals. We need these reports that you can know what we have done and what we will continue to do. And so when it was raised, the government ruled through their spokesperson, not important, not urgent. Since last year in January, they went ahead with the big carnival fete, and all hell broke loose. The cases started coming after that super spread event of Carnival. I see they're talking once again about Carnival. I hope this time they pay more attention that you're creating situations for super spreaders and you're creating situations for deaths of citizens of our country and non-citizens alike. So before you rush into Carnival, yes, we are Carnival people, yes, we love the Carnival, but what is more important is to save lives. So don't go helter-skelter and talk about Carnival Fete. I remember the AG, and we'll come back to him, Saddam. Saddam raised some points, MP Saddam. You remember when since last year he was talking about carnival, even whilst the COVID was on, he was talking about planning for carnival. The mother of all carnivals. Well, listen, sir, AG, as a father, you disowned your own children. You remember that issue? When it came up about children toting gods, the man disowned his own children. He disowned his own children. You could get a person disowning their own children. But who the hell is anybody else? Do you think he cares about anybody else? All he cares about is himself. And we'll come back to Mr. Recusal Faris in a moment. So here we are, we called for change since then. We tried to get it done in the parliament to alert the population. A brilliant man, you know, Tim Gopi, I was telling someone just earlier. Tim Gopi has a resume about 90 pages long. All his qualifications, all his experiences, a tremendously experienced medical person. And early o'clock, you remember last year when this matter came up, I called on the Prime Minister, please let us have a meeting with the opposition and with the government benches. We took a team. Dr. Tim was one of them. We went in with ideas and so on. They took the piece of paper and threw it away. Never followed any. We called for change last year. We called for change over and over and over again. Today with over 3,000 deaths. What has happened? Nothing. It has worsened. When we called for that change, there were only about 200 deaths, you know. Look at where we are now, over 3,000 deaths. We have called for a commission of inquiry into the management of the COVID. They refuse. In Britain, they're doing it. That parliament is not afraid, that government is not afraid. Because if you do the commission of inquiry, you will get data. You'll get ideas and strategies. You'll see what is working, what is not working, so you could better plan. But what you are doing is Vikivike by VAPS. That's your strategy to deal with this pandemic, to deal with this deadly disease. So when we call for that commission of inquiry, I want to give the assurance today, because we are going to move Rowley and the PNM. We move them out of government. When we get into government, we will establish and set up a full commission inquiry into the mismanagement of the COVID pandemic by this government. So when I called for that commission inquiry, I was attacked by the government. Of course, I'm not surprised. I don't think anybody will be surprised, because that's all they can do. Buff mode, they go into buff mode on every issue. We were attacked by some elements in the media, and today I'm seeing where the media itself and individuals, they are now asking why so many deaths. They're now raising these issues. Well, I'm glad at least they got around to it. But this is a live issue, and that is why we say, let us continue to fight this wicked, incompetent, and corrupt government, get them out of office so we can do this commission of inquiry and better manage the situation. So, failed propaganda team. They have made no changes to that team. So many issues arose over their time. The failed propaganda medical team they put out there, dress up pretty and looking nice. Every week, several times a week. I don't think people even watch those anymore or even listen to those anymore, those briefings. And it is basically something that is akin to state-sanctioned murder, what is happening. When I said that again, I was attacked. I'm not surprised, I'm used to it. But it's a salient point. What is happening by your negligence? It is criminal negligence. It is akin to state-sanctioned murder. I repeat that, who vexed, lost. Because I honestly believe that we are mismanaging. For the past 2 years, there was no war on COVID by this government. It was a propaganda war in which they continue. And so every death must be investigated. And Diaz Singh, Parasram, Richards, and all of these people must be held accountable for the state-sanctioned murder, what's akin to say, swept aside as COVID deaths. The mishandling of this COVID debacle, I say again, amounts to criminal negligence. I repeat the call for the commission of inquiry, and listen, Rowley, make way. Move on, pass on, get out of the way, and let us get this country back to a state that is manageable, that takes care of lives and livelihoods. I want to share a story with you as I move into this whole issue of government stated policy, executive fiat. It is not by law. The Prime Minister stands up and he makes a pronouncement and expects and demands that the country follows his executive fiat. That's the emperor and the king, as Mark will tell us. He just makes a statement, and that is law. But you have another thing coming, Prime Minister, and I want to share this story with you before I go a little more into what you're calling a safe zone policy, what you're calling a can't even get the terms right. This is a safe zone policy. Then another document put out, I think, by the PSA, or is it the PSA? PSA calls it a quasi-safe zone. So what is it really? You don't even know your A from your B, your elbow from your feet. You just don't know. You don't know. You're making it up on the hoof, as I say, by VATS, Vaiki. So let me share a story with you, which I saw was posted by one of our staffers in the opposition, Darren Budan. And I thought it is so an analogy that is very relevant in the situation we are in now. So I want to tell you a story of shame and disgrace by this Rowley government. Long ago, officials in the Indian city of Delhi had a problem about how to get rid of cobras slithering around in their city. City officials came up with a bright idea. They said, why not offer a reward for every dead cobra people will bring in to the offices, the various offices. In that way, the city will be rid of this cobra infestation, while there would be an incentive. You'll be giving it, people looking to make some money, they will hunt down the cobras. Okay, they thought problem solved. You could never be more wrong. What could go wrong? For a while, the solution appeared to work. People came in, hunting down the cobras, bringing them in, and so getting rid of some of them. But then, as usual, you have some entrepreneurs, very enterprising people. We have a lot of those in Trinidad, by the way. Enterprising residents of Delhi. They got an even better idea. Why are you doing all this work to go in the bush and in the forest and hunt down cobras? Why? All you have to do is breed them in a pen, right? Then you kill them and you take them in and claim your money. So they became farmers, breeders of the cobras, instead of going hunting where they were. And that's what they began doing. Breeding these things, these cobras, deadly cobras, and selling it back without actually removing those that are out there. So when the administrators caught on to this scam, they stopped paying the people bringing the cobra, the farmers of the cobras. They stopped paying them, no money now. This created a new problem for the persons who were farming the cobras. So what are they going to do now? They have hundreds of the cobras in pens and so on in various places. What will they do with these worthless cobras now that they had in their breeding pens? Again, enterprising. Some people may call them otherwise the scammers. What to do? They found an answer. What they did, well, they can't keep minding and breeding these cobras, so they just let them go. Just let them go. And what happened? The result was that there was even a bigger population of cobras. So the natural cobras out in the fields, and then the ones that have been bred. And so that's what happened. And what it is that we have then, we make up a policy on the hoof as we go along. And we think the problem is solved, but even greater problems arise. So what will happen with this safe zone, quasi-safe zone policy that the government has come up with? What will happen if the 50% unvaccinated fire workers, prisons officers, police officers, etc., teachers and so on? What about if the army as well, what about if they don't take this vaccine and make these safe zones that you're talking about? Air traffic controllers, local government workers, all these thousands of workers that you're saying your money or your life, you're being held to ransom. If you don't bring a vaccine card, what's going to happen? They're laying you off, but they're using a nice word, furlough, if that's how you pronounce it. Nice word. Furlough. Well, what they're telling you basically, don't come to work and you're not getting paid. Is your money or your life? What are the unintended consequences then of this quasi-safe zone policy? What is it? What about when you go to get your NIS or your pensions, or you go into any of these services, even the hospital service, health centers, police, as I said, prison officers, all these public servants, everywhere, the length and breadth. What's going to happen with services to people? We are already overstretched in the healthcare system, parallel or not parallel, already understaffed, under-resourced. Tim shared some of that with us. What's going to happen if you enforce this policy? So, Prime Minister, I think you have another thing coming, that if you try to solve the problem in this way, you will be creating a greater problem of suffering, of no services to citizens. You end up in a health center and those people are not vaccinated and therefore they can't come to work. You go to the Cobra Hospital, the Sanford Hospital, the Port Spin Hospital, you're sick. We already have the problems, you don't have enough staff, you don't have the medication, you don't have the resources, you don't have the ventilators, you don't have the beds. What about now when you don't even have warm bodies, personnel and staff? What's going to happen? What will happen then? So as you come up with this plan, I want to make it very clear, because there are some people like stick breaking their ears. They don't listen and then they write, saying that I have never supported the vaccine policy, that I have never once publicly done so, which is a lie. Almost every time I speak here, I talk about telling you, I say to you, please consult your doctor and consider taking the vaccine. We are fully in support of the vaccines. If I share personal experience with you, over the Christmas break, I witnessed for myself the suffering that COVID brings. It is unimaginable. So you may recover, yes, you may live, but the suffering that you go through, which lasts for I've witnessed it myself. And so again, I make a sterling plea. Please take your vaccines, one. And two, for those who took the vaccines already, take the booster. You are going to be better protected. It may not totally prevent you from getting the COVID, but what it can do, it can help you to survive it. But it's a very painful survival from what I'm told when I said I had personal experience, not like face-to-face, but from hearing from people, loved ones that I know, who really went through a very hard time with the disease. So I urge you again, let me make it clear as I've done repeatedly, please consult your doctor and consider taking the vaccines. And for those who already have shots, take the booster. I want to make it clear, I do not support mandatory vaccinations. I do not. The UNC, the loyal opposition of this country, does not support mandatory vaccination. And for several reasons. I do not want to give this wicked, corrupt, incompetent government more powers, extraordinary powers over lives and bodies of citizens. I want to say what will happen when I say the 50% don't come to work, or in all these services, public servants. What about if they don't show up for D-Day, the government's D-Day? What will happen? And so a program that is meant to eradicate it, which does not. There is no evidence that the vaccinations stop you from getting it. There might be some data, but Dr. Tim could tell us more about that. Well, government, if you have data, show us now. If you want to say that having the vaccine prevents you or the vaccine helps you, well, give us the data. You don't. Why are you hiding data? Why has this government gone on this propaganda campaign and hide data from citizens that could help people to make decisions, inform people? And so it's from this story that an economist, Horst Seibert, he coined a term, the Cobra Effect. I started telling you the story, the Cobra Effect, to demonstrate the dangers of ignoring unintended consequences whilst you're crafting policy on good intentions. Well, we know the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You have to craft policy. You have to consider all the unintended consequences. That Cobra Effect, the little story I told you at the beginning. When Dr. Rowley announced his mandatory vaccine policy for public servants, well, they call it safe zone and quasi, but in effect, that is what it boils down to, you know. When he did that, he did it in his typical authoritarian manner. That's how he does everything. He said, get vaccinated or lose your job. Your money or your life. Your money or your life. That's what he's telling them. Take it or no job, no pay. And so that is not an incentive for people to get vaccinated. It's like a ransom demand. This is like a ransom demand. You're holding citizens to ransom by saying you will not be paid unless you show the vaccine people. And by the way, in Britain now, They're moving to remove, even on arrivals, the testing before you arrive, and then the quarantine things when you arrive. In other countries, they're moving away from these kinds of policies which lock down a country, with places, livelihoods in danger and in jeopardy, and which in fact has collapsed our economy, which I'll share with you in a moment. So, as usual, in ignoring the problem, the unintended consequences of this very bad policy doesn't encourage people to get vaccinated. A vaccine mandate is likely to embolden two groups of people, the anti-vaxxers, who want to traffic vaccine conspiracy theories, and the fraudsters selling fake vaccine and fake cards and so on. I saw an article today in France where there's a standoff and a big protest between the vaxxers and the anti-vaxxers. And then you're moving into the areas of breaches of constitutional rights, which have to do with discrimination. The policy you're saying you're going to put in effect is one of discrimination. It is discrimination. You're saying only people with the vaccine cards could collect pay, work and collect pay. Who don't have vaccine cards? Sorry fellas, no pay for you. So a vaccine mandate could end up making more people vaccine hesitant, and so desperate to keep their job, some may turn up like the Cobra breeders, going for fake cards. Like Delhi's Cobra plan, I say, Rowley's poorly thought out vaccine mandate could end up making more problems and creating a worse situation. Getting more people vaccinated requires government, they have to foster trust. We've lost trust in this government. They have to foster transparency. They must have the ability to communicate instead of talking down to people and buffing up people. However, this government prepares for problems to come back and bite them before they learn. So I shared that story with you. I want to again say, I encourage people, consult your doctor and go for the vaccine or the booster and the boosters thereafter. No to mandatory vaccine. This has only been developed, let's think about it, this vaccine only developed over the past year, You will tell me, well, listen, there are many vaccines that we take, but those have been developed over years and years with data, short-term, medium, long-term data that can help craft policy statements and policy decisions. This vaccine is just like a year. Maybe 10 years from now, you will find out how many things might have gone wrong and may go wrong. I remember there's a story about the thalidomide children. Years ago, they're giving you all these wonder drugs and all these wonder things, and maybe 5, 10 years later, you show up with some kind of defect and serious deficiency. So this vaccine has not been tested and proven over the number of years. And so it's not reasonable to force persons to take their vaccine or lose their job. It's not reasonable. It's a false dilemma you're placing people in, and that is a very wicked thing to do. What next then? Now you come to the children. So first you're going at the adults and saying, hey, no vaccine card, no pay, stay home. What about children? What are we going to do about children? The next they're going to do is to try to force you for your children to take the vaccine. And what will they hold? What will be the weapon? In this case, the weapon, the ransom is no pay. What will they do for the children? They say no education. The children will get no education unless they could present vaccine. That's the next place they will go, going down to the children. The vaccination of a child with such a new vaccine should be the choice of a parent. It should not be the choice of the government. That should not be a mandate from the government. We have vaccines mandatory for children. I've already explained those have been around for quite a while. We have data, enormous amount of data over years. And so you're coming to your children, now listen to me. You may have one child. Will a parent take that risk? Of course, it is up to the parent, but it must be done with the consent of the parent. So the next step I'm saying, will this authoritarian, dictatorial government move into saying your child can't go to school unless they have a vaccine card, denying them the right to an education. But at the same time, as a parent, and many parents are single parents, and even those who are parents of more than one child, will have to consider if to take that risk with their child. And so any mandatory policy, first with the adults, must be with the consent. And any policy for children must be the consent of the parent. And on top of that, If something happens to that child that you're forced to take the vaccine, are you going to have any liability for that? If you are saying you must take the vaccine, then the government must take responsibility and have liability. That if something should go wrong, as things do, Murphy's Law, things do go wrong, then the government must have a duty to make sure that that child gets the top care, utmost top care treatment, and or any other compensatory matters. But for the loss of a child, you could never fully compensate a parent. Every parent would tell you that. Not parents, aunts, uncles, everybody, you cannot compensate for the loss of a child. And that is why that decision, I am saying, must rest solely in the parents of the children, and not in any mandate, not in any executive fiat coming from this wicked, corrupt, incompetent government. Again, I repeat, I am of the firm view that this vaccine should only be administered to children where parents agree. Maybe in more time, with more data, a different policy position. But at the state of play now, that should be something done with the consent of parents. And whilst I speak about that, I want to remind this government that there is a statute on our statute books known as the Data Protection Act. So Forrest will come to say we put in mandatory vaccine or safe zone, and his usual story, Surat and Northern Construction and proportionality and all these hairy-fairy arguments, he comes. Worst AG in the country. Most incompetent AG we've ever had. On top of that, I wouldn't say it, but some people say it, the most corrupt Attorney General we ever had. And this AG now will come with Surat and proportionality and all these nice words. This is the only Attorney General in this country who has found every way around any piece of legislation requiring special majorities. And why did the Constitution framers put in a provision express, not an implied, express in words, that anything touching rights, and these rights, I'm telling you, are enshrined in our Constitution, but they go back from way before 1960 Constitution and 76 Constitution. They go back to the days of something called Magna Carta, from way back 1066, Over all these years, these rights have been developed. You think, okay, my VAPs or by mistake, people put these rights there? They're fundamental human rights. Wade Mark mentioned a very important point. We are a sovereign democratic state governed by a constitution. We are not like the British, who have all these rights, by the way, not governed by a constitution, although they don't have a Human Rights Act, where the approach to legislation is different, because Parliament could do no wrong. However, our Parliament can do wrong, and we do wrong under this AG, if we breach certain constitutional provisions. And in addition to that Constitution, we have the Declaration of Human Rights. I know there is some controversy in the law where they say you may have a treaty, an agreement, an international agreement, but it doesn't bind the government unless it is passed into domestic law. Well, that thinking has moved on. The position now is that once you had ratified the treaty, then people, your citizens, have a legitimate expectation that you will carry through the provisions of the treaty. And so we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have the one coming out of the UN. We have the one out of the OAS and so on. The American treaty relating to those same matters, with fundamental basic rights, and this government will breach every one of them and say we don't need a special majority. Surat, Northern Construction, simple majority. As I said, this AG has doctored and gerrymandered. I can't find a word because it's so disgusting. Every piece of legislation required a special majority. And I started saying to you, why did the Constitution framers put this in? They did it for a reason. You won't put a provision expressing a constitution. Remember that Constitution, the Bible for the operations of our sovereign democratic constitutional state. They have an express provision that certain pieces of legislation must have a special majority. So AG, it is a dunce AG. Incompetent AG will come to tell me what Surat and Northern Construction and so on. When you have an express provision which says that these things require a special majority, You can't just remove that clause and you feel you're gone clear because AG, that's why you're losing cases every day in the court. The bad law that you're bringing to the parliament, the shortcut piece of law that you're doing. And it's going to catch up with you. Each day is catching up with you. Each day. So don't sirat me and northern construction me and proportionality. There is an express provision. Must have. Special majority. Why did they put that in the Constitution if you were saying you could bypass it? Why? Our Constitution has that provision. Some of the others don't have that special provision for special majority. Some say it must be reasonable, which is the equivalent in some words to being proportional and so on. You have doctored every piece of legislation to come to boast how much legislation you pass. And you're going to get every piece of it struck down. In the same way, the 2021 order you made, you doctor that order and you pass it and you boast in the parliament, you bring a 2021 order for selection of a commissioner of police and acting commissioner. What happened? None. We still don't have one, that's true. We still don't have one. It was struck down in the courts. You brought a piece of bad law again, and there are others that have been struck down. By the time you count it, by the time this man finishes his term, which I hope will be very soon, his term will end, you're going to count them up. You'll count them up where he brings this bad law, pontificates and lies in the parliament. The members shared with you some of his lies. And I want to ask him again, what about the Data Protection Act? There's a statutory requirement in the Data Protection Act which says you cannot access personal information. That could be BIR, it could be medical information, and others. You cannot access it without the consent, once again, consent of the person. So you want my medical records? Look, you can't go and get it, you know. You can't go in the hospital and get it, you know, unless you get my consent. You want medical records from who giving vaccine? Tell me if Wayne Mark went and got his vaccine. Tell me if Kirk Mago, tell me. Did you all have a vaccine card for him? He came in a center. You cannot access it, you'll be breaching the law. But you know what? Smart man again, con man again. They came last year like a thief in the night, in the dead of night, and they proclaimed the sections to access the private information. But you know what? In the act, the protections that were given for your fundamental privacy rights and so on, they didn't proclaim those sections, which was the parts to do with consent. Well, you're going to get that strike down too far. That's another one you're going to lose for sure. You can't do that. When we passed that law, we passed it with a special majority. And the reason we were able to pass it was because we had built-in checks and balances. So yes, you could access the medical information, the BIR information and so on, but you have to get the consent of the person involved. So look at that Data Protection Act, Chapter 2204, which is an act to protect privacy and personal information. And such information is defined to include medical records. So careful how you tread. Careful how you tread. We are heading for some kind of chaos on the D-Day they've set. They have different dates. One is the 15th of January, one is the 17th of January. And I think some people have been asked to send in their vaccine information by the 7th, I think. Some people have been asked. The Ministry of Public Admin has put out a circular to all heads departments, PSS and so on, for the whole public service, again, requesting your personal information. Now, that information cannot be shared unless you get the consent of the person. So what will you do? I ask again, if all these people are going to be blocked from working, what will happen in the sector? And coming again, talking about this Attorney General, I didn't plan to talk so much about him, but it's just too much. It is too much. The most corrupt, some people said, but I will say the most incompetent Attorney General we've ever had. So here he is at the center again. There is a series of books written by a very brilliant writer. His name is John Grisham. And he writes a lot of legal novels. And he has one called the Pelican Brief. So we have our own Pelican Brief in Trinidad and Tobago with the, what is it? Pelican Ocean or Ocean Pelican? Ocean Pelican. Ocean Pelican. Who is at the center of this fiasco again? None other than Faris Al-Rukusal. He called a station to speak to the investigating officer. Has he denied that? It is reported that he called and they put the phone on speakerphone and they attempted to now deny this. That's why, I saw Senator Mark and all, hey, get the phone records. Simple, simple, simple. See who called who and who didn't call who. You could prove that in a snap. Call the station. Call Jacob, DCP Jacob, so now acting commissioner. Call DCP Erla Christopher. As if the Attorney General calling police. Are we in a police state? Are we on a Gestapo? Are we in a Nazi state? Authoritarian, dictatorial, so you could call police. You could say what you want about Anand Ramlogan. I never had cause or reason to upbraid him for calling police to tell him how to do their job. You don't do that. Those are two separate arms of the state, the politicians and the TTPS, which has a job in the law under the Constitution, not to take sides, not to be told by any politician what to do, who to call, don't call, what to do. What is the AG doing calling these people? Is he telling them, hey, nothing is wrong with that Pelican boat and thing? Nothing was wrong, nothing in breach of the law. The AG is not the person to advise the TTPS. There's a constitutional independent office. You need legal advice, you go to the DPP. Independent office, you go to the DPP. I wrote to DCP Jacob, raising the issue about a transfer of a Porsche from Faris to a fellow named Kewal Singh. Kewal Singh was at the time a member of the Police Service Commission. The transfer, no disclosure of that transfer, either in his integrity forms, Faris, no disclosure according to law as to the process how it's to be done. And then Faris tells us he authorized somebody. In the law, no, you can't authorize nobody to go and transfer no vehicle. And DCP, I wrote that letter since last year, October. I got a response a couple of days ago. And in that response, they're asking me, well, who is this person authorized? They want to know where to find the person. And really? It is the Attorney General who named this person as the one he authorized. Go ask him. What you ask, do you want me to find? What, I had to get FBI, CIA, private detective to go track down her address and her phone number, whatever. Ask the AG. Ask the AG. Who is this person that you authorize? You get the information from her. He's reported in the newspaper saying that. Then there's so many issues with that car transfer, not done according to process, not done, not declared in integrity form. The check that they finally produced when the story bust, as they say, when the mark bust, not with mark, by the way, when the mark bust, then they produce a check. But when you check the check, I know every time you put a check to go in the bank and cash it, the check is stamped. There's a bank stamp at that time. The bank had you can't just write a check, somebody and cash it. So the check was never in cash, that's the point. Then you have stories about the dates. One, you say, well, Faris said, look, in this year we transferred this date, then the check covered different. Look, it's pure commerce. Pure make-up lies again from the man who should be the defender of the public interest in Trinidad and Tobago. So, the man is a total embarrassment for Nietzsche. He gets away with all kind of despicable behavior. And I can mention some others. Saddam MP raised some of them. Mentioned the gun-toting children. What has become of that? There was an investigation. What has happened? Did Faris call some policeman and say, boy, drop that? Did he make a phone call again? What has happened with that investigation? And I want you to remember how serious this is. A person who was involved in that investigation was found dead. Do you all remember that? A person, an officer of the state, was found dead. I'm not going to call his name, but you all know it in the reports. What has happened with that investigation? What about the withdrawal by this same scamp known as Faris Al-Rawi AG? The claim against Malcolm Jones and Ken Julian. As soon as that man became AG, that was amongst his first things that he did. He withdrew the claim. Millions of dollars scampered away, taken out of the treasury, case filed when we were there. They withdrew the case. Up to today, no plausible explanation as to why. I'll come back to you again, Rowley and Ferris. When we get back into government, all of these matters will be fully investigated. We will ensure that. Come into the fake oil, the bestie of the Prime Minister. Matter went to arbitration. Why did the government, why did Ferris, why did the successor company to pay, why did it not file in the court to set aside the arbitration? They were advised to do that by their own senior counsel, not by Anna and Ram Logan, not by me, not by anybody, but by the senior counsel they had hired. They failed to file. Again, that is another matter that will be fully investigated when we get into government. We have the AG himself breaching the public health regulations. This fellow have no shame in truth, you know. He talk about Farley and Watson Duke and conflict of interest. Who has the most conflict of interest than Ferris? Running a cabinet like it's a cabal, running like a cartel, banditry, way Marx calls it. How many times you recused yourself from cabinet because you were conflicted? You had a conflict. I think it's about 48 times. 48 times, you know. Can you imagine an Attorney General recusing himself about 48 times from the cabinet? Why? Conflict of interest. Why conflict of interest? Because he and or his family stand to benefit from whatever discussion was taking and is taking place before the cabinet. Ferris, you have no shame. None. You have no authority, moral, legal, or otherwise, to talk about conflict of interest. You are one of the most conflicted ministers of government in the cabinet of Keith Rowley. You should have nothing to say about conflict of interest. And then we have him now, the rentals. One, we keep talking about 23 million in rentals, but it's plenty more than that. There's 6, 7, or 8 properties this fella renting to the government, you know. Well, you can't buy flour and you can't buy chicken and you can't buy this, that, prices going up. These fellas laughing all the way to the bank and pontificating and coming to buff you and tell you do this and do that and do the other, buffing up Watson, buffing up Farley, conflict of interest. You are the most conflicted AG this country has ever had, Ferris. I talked to you about a Pelican brief. Did you speak with the man, the son of your colleague minister? He's saying he did speak with you and you gave him legal advice. Did that happen? You have not answered that clearly. Or maybe he lied again because he said it didn't happen. But this man lies so much, as Saram shared with us. And look, think about an attorney general engaging in something that could amount, I'm not saying it does, to witness bribery. Engaging in a secret agreement with Queen's Counsel Nelson. Don't forget these things, you know. He made a secret agreement that he will not tell anybody about the man taxes. He will not tell anybody about anything about this man. And if anything comes up, the state is to take liability. The state, if should any matter come up against Nelson, who is the state? You, the taxpayers. They will pay and pay the bill. Well, far as more things coming from that, we'll talk it another time. But you have a lot of questions to answer for that secret deal you signed with QC Nelson. Because I am told a lot of things are happening behind the scenes. I'm told you went up to England, you carry a team of lawyers, you had to tell us what you went for, what you were trying to get out of, what it is you went up there, with whom did you go, and what it is you're breaking from that you went up to England. Tell us. I'm not accusing you to come and tell me, well, listen, you know, when we go to England, we like to buy robes and neckbands. Lawyers love to buy these things in England. You know, when we sing, not well, he doesn't deserve to wear them anymore, Saddam. Or what else ever that you went to England for? I know they're very famous for cannon biscuits. My sister brought it for me. It's called some kind of Yardley Street or something. They have little toffees and so on. What you went there for? Tell us. That's the point. Why did you go on taxpayers' dollars? Whom did you take with you? And for what purpose? Tell the country, Ferris. We deserve to know because we as taxpayers paid for it. And then we talked about the car already. So, you see, why is it the Prime Minister seems to be backing Ferris 1,000%? Why is the Prime Minister saying nothing about this Ferris recusal, Ferris renting, nothing? Is the Prime Minister afraid of Faris? Is it possible that Faris has some kind of information, something to say holding things on him? Why is the Prime Minister afraid to speak out? And I'm seeing the latest thing here now with the two recusal twins, the twins, Faris and Stuart. Wade spoke about the recusals with Stuart Young. I see like Faris bring one piece of law about fireworks, and I see like Stuart Young saying something else. And somebody today came now and said they're supporting Stuart. Gonzales, what's going on in that cabinet? It's either a cabinet decision or not. If a bill is drafted, it never reaches or should never reach to the parliament unless the cabinet approves. So Faris, did the cabinet approve it? Who knows? Stuart, you were not in cabinet. Maybe that's one day he recused himself. Maybe he had recused and he wasn't there. Maybe the other guy, Gonzales, he recused too. So is there a battle between Faris and Stuart and whoever else? Strange state of play going on in that cabinet. And can I say, whilst they've presided, this AG has presided over so much bad decisions, bad law, losing cases and so on. Well, the Minister of National Security has presided over something I have never seen happen. If it did, remind me when. Where under this Minister of National Security, somebody go and rob a police station. Can you imagine? Some bandit went and robbed a police station of some, I think you told me it's a high-powered, like these fellas are thinking with them big gun, eh? We had the gun-toting children, then this, and then Rowley forever investigating who get gun license, didn't. By the way, what has become of that? I am told that the person was a Stanley John, who you asked to investigate. I am told his report has come in. Why are you hiding that report to? What's in it or not in it? What is it that the country will find out that you were on a wild goose chase, and not just wild goose, you were out there to victimize Gary Griffith, you were there to sink Gary Griffith, so you commissioned this thing and now you can't come and tell the country, again using taxpayers' dollars, what does the report say, Prime Minister? Please tell us. So these are some of the issues with the AG, and the issues with almost every minister in that cabinet. As I've said before, it's like they're running a whole cartel. It's like a business conglomerate, conspiracy, to do what? To make money, while the rest of the population is suffering from the high cost of living, and now you want to send home some of them with no pay. And in the case of the Prime Minister himself, as I say, don't forget the fake oil matter. I want to remind you, Prime Minister, people have not forgotten, they might be quiet for a while, but they have not forgotten. And that is something, again, as I said, we will fully investigate. Gate, did you raise? No reply. The man never even declared it in his integrity form. Those discounts he got for these townhouses. So not only does he have to account why you pay less than everybody else, he also has to account for why he didn't file it in his integrity form. And he come with plain smart with foolishness about A form and B form. Man, the lawyers, you must file it in your B form, which is the one open to the public, and you never put that information there. And by the way, it's not only the Gate he didn't put there. Several others which we'll share with you. There's several other properties. Rowley Boy, since he come in this job, you'll be shocked to see from what he had to how many properties he now has. And when he leaked his own Form A, properties amounting to what is about $14 million. That was on the Form A that he leaked. So that's another whole story, how that came about, when, how, what, and why, and where. So I spoke about several other matters last year. My colleagues have prosecuted well. Can I thank, first of all, Dr. Gopi Singh for his brilliant contribution tonight. I want to thank Saddam Hussein MP, again, for sharing with us brilliantly. Chief Whip David Lee, thank you so much. Senator Wade Mark as well for expounding on these matters. And let me thank our two chairpersons, our Councillor Ramona Victor from the Sapara Corporation, and of course our very own attorney at law, Brian Bake. Thank you all. And for all those of you sitting here with us, the whole technical team, Chairman is here with us tonight. I thank you, and all the technical team, PRO, all of you who are here. Let me just spend a few minutes before I close on this rising cost of food, because you see that is linked to the latest Trinidad and Tobago economic update. This is the Central Bank Monetary Policy Announcement, December 31st, 2022. And this was put out on the 2nd of January, 2022. So what we see from this now, food prices increase and other prices, there's contraction in consumer lending. What does it mean? People are not borrowing. They don't have money to pay back. We have food inflation surged. This is coming from the government's own monetary report. Food inflation surged. There's a 12.6% increase in building material prices. There's supply chain issues, and the business chamber says businesses are crippled, and not to mention the amount of businesses that have closed down and the amount of people out of work. So all of that is coming out of the government's own document, the Central Bank Monetary Policy Announcement, December 31, 2022. So back to this rise in food price issue. That is an assault on your rights, democratic and religious rights. Soon you will have to start skipping meals to save money. It's now $17, I'm told, for a loaf of bread. Maybe it's more since I last read it. Chicken, wait till it's gone up. Flour, bread, milk, sugar, oil, meat, rice. And I just said building materials, everything is going up. Before Christmas, I had begged the government to remove VAT on all essential food items. When I was there as Prime Minister, we did it. It didn't hit the tax base too much. We were able to sustain it. It wasn't a burden, and we were able to help thousands of families. But again, they refused to listen, as you know. He would rather starve the nation than put a UNC policy to feed the nation. And whilst I'm on this now, they have disbanded the food card program. They're looking for fraud and whatever. But that's a good excuse just to shut it down. And the second thing I'm told, they've disbanded the food hampers. That's with the fresh produce. That has also been disbanded. So how do you expect people to eat and live, Prime Minister? Now, when we thought they couldn't go lower, once again, they have surpassed all expectations. The old saying goes, Rowley, they've gone lower than the white line on the road. They've cancelled all the food support for needy citizens. They claim this is interim, as I said, designed to manage expenditure and to collate and review information to support the program, but that's a lie. That's another lie. What they did, they maxed out all the allocations for these things when? In Tobago for the elections. And we will file those questions, and we will get answers. We'll do the freedom of information. How much is spent on all these grants that they gave out in Tobago? It was like madness, freeness. And all that mad freeness didn't help them. They got wiped out, scraped off the mat in Tobago. Thanks to the PDP, who did a great job in Tobago in wiping out the PNM off the face of the map of Tobago. And so, after elections, money, they'll be waiting to bring some supplementary variation to increase votes and so on. But they can't do it now because they maxed out the overdraft. You know, they accuse us of maxing out overdraft. That was a lie too. They maxed out the overdraft. They maxed out the loans that they can take. All they do is borrow and spend. No sustainable development. Up to now, not one plan for sustainable development. Not one plan to grow revenue. Nothing. Property tax, that's not going to happen, but I'm sorry for you. It's not going to happen. You frighten people every month, and every month you extend the deadline to put in the forms. People are not stupid, you know. You cannot do it, Imbert. And if you do, we will reverse it. We will remove the dreaded property tax if you move to do it. Revenue Authority, you'll bring it and pass it with a simple majority. Simple majority, again, doctoring and tampering and gerrymandering our Constitution. Simple majority, you will not get through with that either. You will not. Bad law again. So, look at the stories. On the one hand, ordinary people suffering. They want to take away your pay. Food prices increasing daily. And as I said, they're laughing all the way to the bank, collecting their big rentals, their contracts. One day we'll share with you the 210, you know. And by the way, the Prime Minister also recused himself from the cabinet. We still have to get details, which we'll share with you. Why did the Prime Minister find it necessary to recuse himself? What was his conflict of interest? What was it about? We have to delve down into that and seek information. I cannot not speak tonight without talking a bit about the discrimination against open fire cremations. against the failure to open up the ponds and streams and rivers and so on, which is affecting the Hindus, but is also affecting spiritual Baptists. Somebody told me today, well, I'm hit on both sides because I'm a Hindu, and as you know, I'm part of the Baptist faith. So I see that our former AG, Anand Ramlogan, has filed a pre-action letter on behalf of a spiritual Baptist person, on behalf of a Hindu person. And this is a very serious matter. Because where you could have an open fire cremation at minimum cost, I am told now that people have to pay $30,000 and $40,000 to go in a funeral home, but where funeral homes never had it so good. Making real money. And that's not only part of it, the cost of it for families. The other aspect of it has to do with how long they're keeping the bodies. Because you have a limited number of crematoriums in these funeral homes, and therefore you have to book a date now. You have to make an appointment. So sometimes the families, their loved one has passed. You have to pay as well to keep them there. To keep them there over time before you get an appointment for the cremation. And there is nothing. The WHO, they're lying because the WHO says no announcement, they have nothing about open fire cremations, absolutely. Spreading COVID, none. But the government wants to tell us, WHO say, hey, you can't do it, lie again. Where's the science? Are you following the science? Are you, once again, victimizing people of the country? Can you imagine poor families having to pay $30,000 and $40,000, man? You already have the stress and the trauma, you lost a loved one. Then you can't get the body for a week, 2 weeks. And then on top of that, the cost. This is discrimination. Open, clear, and square discrimination. And I'm glad that Anand Ramlogan is proceeding to take court action. So this government, they will not listen and they will not try to help. They will wait till they go to court, which takes time. So in the meantime, they feel they're getting away with it. And people are suffering whilst they feel they're getting away. Only through the courts that you can do it. If you're a friend of finance of the PNM, you want a loophole in the COVID rules, all you have to do is do what? Call Faris. The minister's son, hey, listen, I want to run a party boat, FET and so on. What to do? Look for loopholes. You can do that, and yet we have thousands of people who are suffering because of your discrimination against that community. So there's one rule for them and another rule for another. But this is a matter, it really breaks my heart because I do know the suffering. We see it all the time. Our constituents, a lot of them, are going through this discrimination. And I'll tell you something. How can we, all I can say is, Faris, have a heart. Or if you lost it, try and find it back now. Try and find it back. Why do you have this ban on open cremations? Why? We have been doing that from day one since whenever it was, from the 1800s when Hindus have been coming to our land. And it's not only Hindus who use open fire cremations. Remember that. So while they're discriminating against one religious group, there are others who are impacted as well, because if they had to go and pay $30,000, $40,000, man, that is discrimination of the highest order, Faris. And therefore, again, we have the court matter pending, blah, blah, blah. Deal with it. Don't wait to go to court and take 2 and 3 years. You know how many people will be suffering? How many people are being discriminated against? How many families? Please rethink your policy on that. And then now, you have a government who is always totally against democracy. The PNM has always been against democracy. And that brings me to the good news, in one sense, of the final declaration by this government of the by-election for the Davis South Electoral District. That councillor died 14th of February last year. Yes, nearly a year later, in February, not in February, nearly a year later, well, the election is to be in February. So they have had no councillor and will not have until February, when that election is called, a representative at the level of the councillor. So we are happy to get it, but I tell you, we had to as I say, you had to push and pull them, kicking and screaming to announce that day. They have a history of not adhering to democratic principles when it comes to local election. I wrote to them last year. I wrote a pre-action letter to them last year, demanding they call the election. You know what they write back and say? Well, we can't do an election because of COVID. You hear lie? That is lie. You held a general election in the middle of the pandemic in August 2020. You had two THA elections, but when it comes to Davis South, well, we can't do it, because of protocol and COVID. Lies. Lies again. Lies. And the electorate there is very small. Tobago had more people to vote than this little local government seat will ever had. But, the only reason they did it because the legal action has been initiated. The case has actually been filed now. The case is still in court. And all their lies and stories they're making up, they will get, licks like fire, licks like peas. Ferris, another one you're going to lose in the courthouse is about this, this Davis South by-election. So, why do we have to threaten the government before you can get basic rights? Why? Why do you all run a government like that? That's all you're doing. Should it not be the government's role to protect the rights of all? How many more times must the UNC have to pick you to court pre-action letter and so on? To knock down and lick down the bad laws you keep bringing and the bad decisions you're making. Laws infringing constitutional rights. If Ferris had to personally pay the costs for the multiple losses he has suffered, and when he's paying those, when he loses, who pays? You. Taxpayers have to pay. If Ferris had to personally pay that, he might have taken different positions from time to time. And it's not the first time. When there was a councillor who had died in the Barataria seat, local government, a couple of years back, I had to write again. I had to send a pre-action letter, lawyer letter, to force them to call the election. It is this PNM government who held no local elections from 2003 till never. It's only when I went into office in 2010 we called a local election. They have never honored local government representation and democracy. So from 2003 to 10, almost 7 years, they refused to call a local election. And this was not for a by-election, this was a whole shebang. All the seats for local government statutorily due by law. Every year, the then PNN government, they come to parliament, they extend a year, extend a year, extend a year. From 2003 down until, as I said, when we went in, soon after the general election in May 2010, I called the local election in I think it was July of that same 2010. And every year we've been there, we have adhered to the democratic principles, we have called them. And here again, we had to pull them kicking and screaming, send matter to court to get them to call this by-election. So Rowley, you get wiped out in Tobago. You're going to get wiped out in Davis South. It's licks like fire, licks like peas. The UNC will win that seat. We are campaigning. We opened up nominations. We received nominations. Next week, the party will begin the screening process. Monday, the 17th is nomination day. We will have a candidate in place. But already, UNC teams are on the ground, interacting, seeking advice and opinions from the electorate in that seat as to how best we can service that Davis South seat. So I look forward to that by-election. And I warn you, do not get distracted by the by-election. So they call by-election, all the time you're fighting and screaming, you don't want to do it. You name the date, you think we're going to get distracted with the by-election. We are going to win it. And therefore, we will stay focused on the issues. We will continue to report to you from time to time, in addition to the usual Monday night report and our Sunday press briefings. We want to reinstitute a Wednesday night report, so we'll have those as well, because, media is good and media is not so good sometimes, so they don't report everything, but the social media is a tremendous medium to share our thoughts and ideas with you. So we'll have a Monday virtuals, Wednesday virtuals, and the Sunday press briefings to keep you updated as we move forward. As I said at the start, this is a year of change. Saddam used the word winds of change blowing. Well, they've been blowing from Charlottesville and Tobago, is blowing across Trinidad, all over Trinidad, all the way to Cetra. So Trinidad, wake up. Tobago, wipe out, as I said, Rowley and the PNM off the map. People in Trinidad, let us do the same. Let us wipe Rowley and the PNM off the Trinidad map. Let us take back our country, take back our government. In this year, this is a year when this corrupt and oppressive government, led by Rowley, is finally held to account for their misdeeds and misconduct in public office. And you know, AG, by the way, watch out. It may very well be you are going to be investigated and thereafter charged for several counts of misconduct in public office. It's more than one now, it's too many, it's just too many. Misconduct in public office. So let us, as I close here, say, look, my friends, all of us, 2022 is a year of hope. We must never forget that. Whilst we complain about all the ills and whilst we make suggestions, this is a year of hope. There are many challenges. We need to reset our economy. We need to put our economy on the right path. We need to reboot our once proud energy sector. We must put our people back to work. We need to plan for changes happening worldwide and prepare our children for opportunities in an ever-changing world. And of course, we really need to deal with the public health sector. That sector is dead, just like the over 3,000 persons who died. Health and safety. We have a government that has no clear policy. The only policy they have is to promote fear and intimidation, make you frightened and intimidate you. The UNC has always rebuilt our nation after the PNM destroys it. We will do it again. This time, we will build back our nation better than ever. And whilst we have several plans we've shared many times, we'll continue to share our plans and our initiatives as we go forward. But I want to give you the assurance tonight that when, not if, when the UNC forms the government again, we will hold every one of them to account transparency. And investigations will be done. When necessary, commissions of inquiry will be done. I mentioned the arbitration matter. I mentioned the gun-toting children, the Pelican brief. There's so many of them. And all these recusals, we will have full investigations into those matters. So if you think you'll get away today, what they say, rope something longer than twine. Time is longer than twine. We will come for you. And if you have misconducted yourself in public office, then you will have to pay the full cost of such misconduct. I thank you all very much again. I thank you for joining us, sharing with us. As I say, I always enjoy speaking with you. Give me the inspiration to keep going, keep struggling, keep fighting. All of us. You are our inspiration. You are our hope. You are our strength. And as I always tell you, and I remind you as we start this new year, you would have had other leaders before me. You will have other leaders after me, but you will never, ever have a leader who loves you as much as I do. May God bless you, and I thank you all very much.
The voice of the people is the voice of God. The tables are turning, your eyes are opening. Welcome to the revolution. People crying out for justice. Some of them crying out for freedom. Everybody crying out for democracy. Now it's time to take a stand. Yeah. Come on! Cause this is the revolution. The people's revolution. This is the revolution. Let's unite and stand for something. This is the revolution. The people's revolution. This is the revolution. I wanna hear everybody say freedom. Everybody say freedom. Man and woman say freedom. Everybody say freedom.